How do we select our members of parliament? Is there a better way of doing this? Surely there must be. Well, joining me to discuss all of this, having written a big piece about it on the website Unheard this morning, is veteran journalist, broadcaster, writer, even biographer, Michael Crick. And I say that, folks, because he's written a book about me not too long ago.
I think we want to make it clear, an independent book about you, without your cooperation.
I have no cooperation from me whatsoever, but we're still talking, so it can't have been that bad. Michael, you know, you mentioned that more MPs have gone to jail in the last 2 decades for dishonesty over their expenses, for perjury and for sexual offences than at any time in the last 200 years. Is it that the calibre and quality of MPs is lower than ever, or is it just in the modern day they get caught more easily?
Well, I think there's an element of they get caught more easily and perhaps the courts are more harsh on them. But I think the real problem is the lack of scrutiny, particularly early in the process. And as a journalist, over the years, I've always had what I always say, accidents waiting to happen. You know, Geoffrey Archer was the prime example. How he was ever chosen as the Tory candidate for Mayor of London when all the things that everybody knew about him in his past are all the doubts about his past. Andy Coulson was chosen to be communications director for David Cameron and then in Downing Street when he was so close to the whole of the phone hacking affair. And, of course, eventually he went to jail. How people made those appointment decisions. And, of course, in your own party, you know, you had trouble finding a successor and a whole series of unsuitable subsequent leaders of UKIP, so you weren't exempt either.
Well, it was a hot job.
And in Labour, you had Keith Vaz. I mean, you know, Keith Vaz was elected by MPs as chairman of the Home Affairs Committee when only a few years earlier he'd been suspended for Parliament for not cooperating with a select committee. So, you know, it goes on and on and on. Just lack of judgment by people in power.
When it comes to an MP being selected in a constituency, this is very much down to the head offices now, isn't it? I mean, local democracy doesn't quite have the power that it did.
Well, there's this tension between giving all the local members a vote and head office.
Yes.
And what they try and do is they give the local members a shortlist, and generally the shortlist is structured in such a way that there's only really one choice. I mean, take, you know, I remember going to the selection of Tristram Hunt, who became a Labour MP in 2010, and the shortlist that night was basically him and 3 people of obviously very low calibre. And that's how you fix a selection. Yeah. There's this tension, and the local activists and the local voters more and more and more want local candidates, and the party leaders want people who are going to be potential ministers, people of calibre, people who've had a national track record, maybe done something in a different walk of life. And you've got that clash of cultures, quite apart from the party leaders also trying to ensure that there aren't many dissidents on the backbenches.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
And every selection has got its stories and chicanery and you know, scheming going on behind the scenes, and this gets barely covered by journalists.
And this is leading to
people like... Yeah, and my view is that if perhaps there'd been a bit more attention to some of these people before they became MPs, and people looked into their backgrounds, then some of them, not all of them, probably only a handful, would not have got into Parliament, and you wouldn't have ended up with the scandals that we've got right now. But instead of that, the political parties, including your own, I think, the ones you've led, choose these candidates amid extraordinary secrecy. They don't publish the shortlist. If you publish the shortlist, it would give the public an opportunity to write in and say, well, hang on a moment, I was groped by that guy, or he defrauded me.
But they can't have a say. In America, they have a completely different system of open primaries. These haven't properly been tried here, have they?
No.
But just run us through how an open primary would work.
Well, I mean, the thinking is that actually in a lot of seats, once you're chosen as the candidate, you are effectively the MP because it's a safe seat. Yeah. So the open primary would work. Either you give all the voters in a constituency the chance to select the Labour or the Conservative candidate. And indeed, the Conservatives tried this on a few occasions, or they hold a meeting to which members of the public, any member of the public who is a voter, can go along and help choose. And indeed, I took part...
old-fashioned hustings.
Old-fashioned hustings. And I took part in the Conservative selection in Battersea, I remember, about 12 years ago, when I was there for Newsnight and as a local voter. And, man, it was a boring evening, I have to say, because it was very, very difficult to tell the candidates apart. And it didn't really work, because nearly everybody there was clearly a Conservative activist. But in theory, if you were to involve voters in the choice of candidates through one of these two mechanisms, like akin to what they do in America, then it would give more scrutiny. The problem is the cost. The Conservatives at one point were committed to legislating for state funding for something like this. Well, that was one of the first casualties of George Osborne's austerity. And frankly, it's not surprising, really, that that was cut. I'm not sure, really, right now, or indeed for many decades, the state coffers are going to be able to extend to funding.
But this is not
elections.
big money compared to many other things.
No, you're probably talking about 50, depends how you do it, whether you prepaid envelopes or whatever, but 50,000 probably per primary election. But, I mean, they chose Sarah Wollaston, you remember the former Conservative MP down in Totnes, and indeed I covered that. And they sent out postal ballots to all the voters. She won. And then she became a great dissident on the Conservative benches. And David Cameron was heard to say, never are we going to hold a primary election ever again.
But final thought, do these open primaries work in America?
Well, I think they do. And it basically gives people a proper choice, because in a lot of states in America, they're either one way or the other, solid Republicans, solid Democrats. So if you get a choice in a if Republicans can take part in a Democrat primary, and the rules vary from place to place, and you have to sort of be a registered supporter of that party, but it does mean there is more choice going on, and it's not left to party fixers all the time to choose candidates. But hey, a hell of a lot of fixing goes on in American politics, probably more than here, and an extraordinary amount goes on in the selection process in British politics as well.
Michael Crick, thank you for those thoughts.